How's it going, everybody? And welcome to episode 274 of Master My Garden podcast. Now, this week's episode being the first Friday of May, we're doing our usual seed sowing guide. And I suppose May is, probably the busiest month in the garden. It's the month where growth typically comes together. All your beds are full, lawns are growing, perennials are peeping up, weeds are starting to grow as well. And so it tends to be the busiest month in the garden. It's quite a busy month on the sowing front as well. Certain seeds will have dropped off the list this month, but the majority remain there. And again, it's one of the months where the most variety of seeds can be sown. It's as we record this one, it's a huge difference to last week. So last week I spoke about protecting seedlings and young plants, from the harsh weather that we had a week or 10 days ago. And at the time of recording, it's a totally different scene. So a few days later, it's totally different again. And as we enter into May, it's really warm and dry. And yeah, with all the moisture, all the rain that fell last week, and now the heat, growth has really started. So we have an explosion of growth at the moment, and it's a busy month. There's, as I said, lots that can be sown, and you see, aside from the sowing, all of the garden shows are getting going. This weekend is the festivals of gardens and nature. And that's in Ballintubbard House. That's on this weekend. Some amazing speakers at that. A fantastic array of speakers at that. At the end of the month, Bloom will be kicking off. I might chat a little bit more about that in the coming weeks. And yeah, there's last weekend was the Clare Garden Festival, and it seems to be plant fairs. Kilgar Gardens have a plant fair on Saturday. I think the following Sunday there's the Mount Congreve rare and special plant sale. So there's a huge amount of gardening events kicking off now. May is the traditional month for all of those, so you can imagine there's lots going on. So on the sowing front, we're going to go through them, sort of group them together a little bit as well. And this list hasn't changed a wild amount from last month. A couple of things will have dropped off. A couple of things that are going to need really long seasons. They've dropped off. We're running out of time for those things like, in terms of sowing, getting a little bit late for sowing of tomatoes. It's because really you want to be getting them into the tunnel at this stage. So if you haven't sowed, or if you're held up for any reason, or some of your seedlings failed, just go at this stage and buy plants. There's no big deal in that. And things like peppers, again, need a long season and should be planted into the tunnels basically now once it's warm enough. And, again, if you don't have seed sown of those, it's a little bit late. You're going to be up against it to get a harvest from them. So get some good strong plants, get them in, tend to them well over the first few weeks, get them established, and then you'll have crops quite easy quickly. Melon is another one. It's too late for sowing that. So there's a few bits and pieces, and then there's a good few on the list that this is going to be the last chance for sowing, and we really are looking at the earlier part of the month for sowing. So just to start off, we're looking again, with your successional crops. So pretty much every month, spring onion is going to be on it. We're still sowing, the standard white Lisbon or some of the spring summer varieties. They're perfect for now. Summer salad leaves, a mix of salad leaves. I have a really good one sown, which is quinoa, rocket. There's what else is in it? There's a lettuce in it. There's 4 or 5 different types, and that's a brilliant one to sow. Just to get a little bit of variety in it. Perennial rocket is a superb one. Just an hour ago, I harvested perennial rocket. That's there all the time. It's in flower, but you can still harvest, leaves off it they're a little bit stronger than the standard rocket, but they're beautiful. And just I'll take the flowers off them over next week or two, but it will continue, and next year it'll continue, and it's just always there. Pretty much a harvest off it all year round. So perennial rocket is a brilliant one if you can get it. Spinach is another one, again, successionally sown that you will notice now, especially with temperatures, that it's going to run to seed quite quickly. So you want to be harvesting as quick as possible, using it up. and then doing small and regular sowing. So every couple of weeks, you're doing a sowing of it. Radish is another one. Again, will grow really, really quickly. You'll get a harvest quite quickly off it. And, within a few weeks of this time of the year, you're going to be eating radish, fresh radish. Lettuce, just the standard heads of lettuce. Again, I don't do a huge amount of sowing. It's on the sowing guide every month. I don't sow lettuce every month. I'll sow it a couple of times a year because I will utilize sort of leaf harvesting as opposed to head harvesting. So, for example, again at lunchtime, I had some lovely curly-headed lettuce. I'm not sure the variety, but a lovely curly-headed green lettuce, and it was delicious. But all I'm doing is breaking off the outside leaves, and that's going to give a harvest for the next couple of months. But if you want to harvest heads, you just need to continue to sow to ensure that you have a continuity of crops over the coming months. Then a couple that are kind of your last chance to sow. Leeks is one of those. So at this stage, you're going to be switching to an autumn stroke winter variety. You'll make your sowing now, you'll plant out in a month's time, and then that's going to give you one of these late harvests. So this is, what we talk about quite a lot, is utilizing that space that we have available and that we're getting our harvest right through to autumn and into winter and even through to early spring. And some of what we'll talk about today will be specifically aimed at that. So leeks, switching to a winter variety and kind of last sowing earlier part of this month. Next one is beetroot. Again, a couple of sowings a year of beetroot will do the trick. But in the month of May, if you get a sowing now, then that's going to be again a really late harvest, end of autumn, early winter, and will store at that stage as well, even in the ground. So a good sowing of beetroot at this time of the year is going to give you a nice longevity in harvest. Other things that we can be sown, just in terms of the brassica family, cabbage. So at this stage, we're going to be switching to the autumn winter varieties. So Savoy, red cabbage, those type things. And again, you're looking at a harvest down the line, especially with the longer term ones like red cabbage and Savoy. They're going to be slow to sort of head up and be mature. But then you can still continue to sow the likes of greyhound and the pointed head lettuce. They'll give you a much quicker harvest over the coming months. Purple sprout and broccoli, last chance kind of this month to be sowing those because they need a really long season. If you get a sowing done now, you'll get to plant them out in a month's time, and then that's going to give you a harvest around Christmas time and into January, February of next year. Really worthwhile crop because you'll find that purple sprout and broccoli at that stage is just a kind of a welcome boost of fresh greens, and they'll be really, really tasty, quite abundant as well. A little, the Calabres, you just really get one head of broccoli off it, and then you just cut it off, and it's for the space and the time, I find it a little bit of a waste of time, to be honest with you. Whereas something like purple sprout and broccoli, you get just much more off it. You'll be able to continue to harvest over a good few weeks, and it just gives more for the space that you're giving it. It is a long-term crop though, so it's going to take quite a bit of time to get to that stage. Calabres, I mentioned, yeah, they're very tasty, obviously, but I just think they take up a lot of space, quite slow, and then the reward at the end is a little bit less than what it should be. Cauliflower is another one that really falls into that bracket. Cauliflower is beautiful. It's actually one of my favorite vegetables, but the reality is that it takes up a lot of space in your beds, and then all you get is one harvest, and it tends to come at once. So I find calabash and cauliflower you don't get enough out of it. I grow them, I love them, but just if you're limited on space at all, don't bother with those. Turnip. So again, continuing with the Milan purple tops or the snowballs, those type, small turnips. You can continue to sow them at the moment. And Swedes, this kind of last chance this month to sow Swedes. So yeah, they're going to give you a harvest again through to autumn and winter. So this is why we continue to sow. This is why we have the monthly sowing guides, because you can get out, you can get all your sowing done early, fill up your beds, but you do need to be looking ahead, looking to keep those beds full, to keep something coming towards the kitchen, in the depths of the winter and into next spring. Another one that you can sow this month is pak choi, a really good one. that'll give you a harvest quite quickly. So you'll be harvesting those in, we're now May, probably looking at July, August time harvest. But again, you can sow this later on as well. We're also looking at last sowings of certain ones of the warmer type crops, the ones that need heat. So, for example, cucumber. Again, for me, I won't be doing sowing a cucumber this month. All you need is one or two plants. I already have those, so I don't need to sow anymore. Courgette the same. Again, exact same for me. Won't be sowing this month, but you can earlier in the month, and with cucumbers early in the month. And you are looking at, again, one or two plants is going to do and going to solve all your requirements. So you don't need to keep sowing that. Sweet corn, very much the last chance to sow that. Yeah, do it in the earlier part of the month, and it's a great crop to have. French beans, you can direct sow those at this stage, and they'll give you crops, whether it's the bush ones, little compact ones, or the climbing ones. You can sow them and sow them directly now. You can also pot them or sow them into a pot. That's an easy way of doing it as well if you want to continue to utilize your propagation area. But at this stage, we can start direct sowing quite a bit. Um, Celery, again, can be sown this month. Peas can be sown this month. And another two now that are definitely into the last month, pumpkin and squash. So they require a long season. I find that the squash particularly, because of the length of season required, and I think because of the lack of sunlight over the last couple of summers, they are hit and miss. So you can have quite successful years and then other years not so much. But pumpkins generally speaking are successful, and squash can be successful, is successful a lot of the time, but sometimes it can be a little bit hit and miss. So just watch out for that. But either ways, sowing from a sowing perspective, it's early in the month if you can at all. Some of the herbs we're still sowing, and some of them actually will be sowing kind of, for the first time, or it's the first time that we can successfully and easily sow them. So coriander, chervil, dill, parsleys, pretty much any of those can be sown this month. Basil, I haven't sown any yet, but I will sow it now this month. So basil is definitely needs the heat, and do one good sowing of basil and it'll do you all year. You don't need to keep sowing that. Other vegetables, still haven't got my carrots, my parsnips sowed. I have my carrots sowed. I haven't got my later variety of carrots sowed, but again, hopefully this weekend I'll get that done. So carrots and parsnips to be sown. And parsnips, just one sowing. Carrots, this will be the last of two sowings that I do. And yeah, I'll be harvesting those right through into the winter. And that's kind of the overall list of seeds. Still loads of time to be sowing annual flowers. And you can direct sow a lot of those outside now. So, things like poppy can be sown outside. Wildflowers, still perfect time to sow them. You're looking at loads of annual flowers basically can be sown and direct sown at this stage of the year. So once the temperatures are up, which they are now, quite warm, the bit of moisture that came last week, it's a great chance to get annuals into the ground. And other jobs that we can be doing, still time to sow potatoes if you haven't done already. Secondaries and main crops, it's probably gone a little bit late for the very early varieties, but secondaries, main crops, no problem at all. And then on top of that, what you will see coming into your beds at this stage, no dig beds, etc., is you'll start to see the weeds peeping up after that spell of wet rain last week. So the moisture and now followed by the heat. So in order to stay on top of that, just get a really dry day, which, for example, today is a really dry day with lots of sunshine. Get a good hoe, like a oscillating hoe or a Dutch hoe, and lightly hoe all those seedling weeds on a dry day, and they'll just crisp up in a couple of hours, and that'll be your weeding done for a couple of months. And it's really easy to do it on a dry day like that. So you're not digging the ground, you're just giving a little scratch, killing off the root. It'll get, as I said, crisp up on a day like today, and it really makes it easy. But you do need to keep on top of the weeds, because if they start to get ahead of you now, which they'll do overnight nearly at this time of the year, then it's a sort of a bigger battle to try and get back, get it back under control. So any weeds appearing in your vegetable beds, just get on top of them quickly. But there's quite a bit we can be sowing, still loads to be doing. It's generally speaking a very, very busy month, as I said. There's lots to be at. I hope, yeah, this month the sewing guides every month are really popular. So people clearly like getting the little reminder of what to sow and what we can sow and what should we sow in this month. The biggest thing is always to keep sowing a little bit anyway, and to keep, because it means that you're going to have longevity in your crops down the line. And yeah, there's lots this month that we can sow. If you've missed out on any of the sowings or anything has dropped off the list this month, just get yourself a few plants, get them in. Still loads of time to do that. So it's not all gone if you've missed those sowing chances. But hopefully, anyway, that's given you a little bit of an inspiration or a help in what you want to sow or what you can sow this month. And yeah, don't forget, any gardening questions, give me a follow on Instagram. Keep in touch with me. Yeah, heard from lots of listeners after I reached out last week. So, anyone has any questions, any advice, anything you want covered on a future episode, just bang me an email, info@mastermygarden.com. Follow me on Instagram. I'm on Facebook and all those places, and continue to share the podcast if you can. And that's been this week's episode. Thanks for listening, and until the next time, happy gardening.